Hi there, my name is Vadim Michalenko from howtoanalyzedata.net, where we teach you how to make smart decisions by analyzing your data and learning about your tools. In this tutorial, we're going to look at how to create a family budget using Microsoft Excel 2013. Make sure to download sample files from howtoanalyzedata.net. The topics we're going to cover is we're going to look at what is the budget and how you can use it for your benefits. We're going to look at the different budget periods, weekly, monthly, annual, and others. We're going to look at how you can calculate your income and look at the typical income categories. We're going to look at calculating expenses and typical expense categories. We're going to look at planned versus actuals in the budgeting process. And once it's done, how you can add formatting and graphs to make it more visual and more representative of what you're trying to see. And the last step, we're going to look at the sample budget files that come with Microsoft Excel. So I have an Excel opened, and this is the simple Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. The first thing I'm going to do is going to type in and create the title for our budget. This is family budget, and obviously what you can do, you can make it bold, a little bit bigger, and we're going to play with the settings a little bit later. So the first thing in understanding budgets is the simplest calculation of what you have. You have income and you have an expense and you have difference. For example, the income might be $2,000 a month versus expense, which is $1,500 a month, and the difference would be income minus expense, which is $500. It's going to expand the column a little bit. What it shows to us is that the income is what you've earned during particular budget period versus expense is what you've spent during the same period, and the difference could be positive or negative. If it's positive, it is surplus. This is money you still have after you accounted for all of your expenses, versus negative number, which is where you spend more than you've earned, and that would be something where you have a deficit. We're going to apply a little bit of formatting since we're talking about money here. And that's I did this by clicking the dollar sign and converting the symbols into dollars. So that's the basics of any budgeting. You have the very, very simple formula where you look at the difference between income and expense. Let's look at the different budget periods. And budget periods, as I mentioned, could be weekly, could be monthly, or could be annual, or could be even on the custom defined period schedule. In Microsoft Excel, what we can do, we can use one of the rows to define the period, and I'm going to define and show you how to do it differently. We're going to start with annual. We're going to do January, February, March, and I'm going to show you one little trick where you can just drag it and it will populate it and it will fill in the different values for you. So it automatically predicted that what we've done is we've looked at we typed in just 3 months of the year, and I used this little rectangle at the bottom of the selection, and I just Excel intelligently filled in the options. Another thing we have is we can, for example, instead of doing budget for the entire year, we can do it on the weekly basis. Let's say we have a 12 weeks, and let's start with one particular date would be July 1st, 2014. And what we can do here, we can say, okay, my next week would be this date plus 7, right? Because week always has 7 days. And Excel is smart enough, as you will see, to move it into the next month. So we're done with July, and Excel moves it into August and then into September. And if we would continue that, it would move it into October as well. So these are the budget periods, and whatever you need to do, you just need to figure out what kind of formula you have and what type of budget you would like to do. In the meantime, I'm going to delete this row, and I'm going to delete this simple formula. As I have mentioned already, budget is the difference between income and expenses. So let's take a look at the typical income categories. There are multiple types of incomes, and typically you have multiple family members that might be earning income at the same time. So what we're going to do here, we are going to say that in the income category we'll have income 1 from the first family member and income 2, and this is typically defined as the salaries. Also gonna add a couple more rows, and here we are going to do a dividends from stock investments, from other types of investments, or we can do a business income. Some people have business on the side, or business might be some other income related to business, and that's where you would like to account it for. Obviously, what you would want to do, you would want to customize all of this categories here for your own needs. So for example, if you don't have dividends or business income, you don't have to include it, but I'm trying to make a generic template that might be applicable for a lot of different people. And the last category into income I'd like to include is capital gains, and that's also could be from appreciated securities such as stocks or some other assets. So what I'm going to do to make it easier to view, I have selected all different income types, and I am going to shift it a little bit so we can see that there's some indentation between income, and we can mark income as the category, mark it in bold. I'm just going to add an extra line to make it visually more appealing. Next thing, I'd like to look at the expenses and different expense categories, and as you will see, there are a lot more expense categories than income categories, which tells us that we like to spend money a lot more than earn them, and there are a lot of different things that we can spend them on. So let's add some additional categories, and if you use a shortcut key Control Y, it repeats the last Microsoft Excel operation or any Office product operation. So in expense categories, I'm going to start with housing. Then I will add, in addition to housing, I'm going to add transportation expenses, then insurance, then I'm going to add taxes, I'm going to add savings and investments, I'm going to add food, next category I'll add a personal care category, then legal category, gifts and donations, Couple other categories I will include as loans and entertainment. So these are the major categories for expenses. What I'm gonna do next, I'm going to look at how we can populate the values here for every month based on the estimates that we know about, and then how we're gonna also look and track this budget going forward. So that would be the next step. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you how you can populate it here, and what kind of formulas can you apply. For example, for income, I'll assume stable income in the amount of $2,000 for income 1, and then I will assume for income 2 stable income of $2,500. For the second earner, $300 for the dividend once a quarter, so in the first month of the quarter. Business income of about $700 a month, and then capital gains once a year in the amount of $500. I'm also going to change all of this to dollar sign right here, so it represents money, and I'm just gonna add the expense as the category here. So let me introduce the total column for the income, and here I'm just gonna mark it as total, and you can use different formatting, whatever's convenient for you. And I'm gonna use auto sum function, which will do a sum for the January, for the months of January, and this is our total income for January, and I'm gonna expand it for the entire year. And as you can see, the incomes are different for every month, and that's on purpose so we can deal with the different incomes. So you can see the varieties of data here. Let's do similar exercise for expensing. For example, housing might be a rent, or could be a mortgage payment. Let's assume it's a rent in the amount of $900, stable rent. Transportation could include fuel expenses, or if you travel by underground ways of transportation, or by bus, could be different amounts, but I'm just gonna assume $300 a month stable transportation costs. Insurance could include your life insurance, could include your medical insurance, some other premium insurances, and typically this is depending upon your income and the amounts that you're insuring yourself. In this case, I'll probably estimate in the amount of $200, even though medical insurance always rising, so you got to be careful and estimate probably more conservatively. Taxes typically would be a percentage of your total income, so typically I would put 1/3 of the income, maybe a little bit less than 1/3, so let's just do $1,700 a month. Savings and investment, recommended amount is 10% of income or more, preferably more, between 10 and 30%. Hard to save 30%, but it certainly pays off later in life when you take advantage of compounding growth. So let's assume that savings will be, in this case, in the amount $550. Food, let's assume $300 a month. Let's assume that this is a single person. Personal care would be $400 a month for both family members. Legal might be a subscription to legal service, and that probably is going to be around $75 a month. unless there are some additional large legal expenses, which is unlikely. Gifts and donations typically estimated 5 to 10%. So let's assume 7%, that would be around $400 a month. Loan payments could be student loans, could be credit card loans, could be some other things. Let's assume that these are college graduates and they're paying off their student loans, so that probably would be around $400 plus the credit card loans. That's a safe estimate nowadays. And entertainment, let's assume $200 for the entertainment monthly. Could include books, concerts, some other ways of entertainment. Let's calculate total here. Let's just apply $, and let's calculate total. So we'll use auto sum function, and surprisingly, or maybe not, we came up pretty close for the expenses, pretty close to the budget. And the interesting thing here is that the total for income and total for expenses is the same for expenses, because I didn't estimate that. There could be different values, but most likely some month you're gonna have varieties of payments. For example, legal fees may be quarterly, gifts and donations may not be to such heavy amount. But if you look at the difference now, we're gonna do difference between totals, and we're gonna say that the difference is income minus total for expense, which represents $75. And you see, in some months we even go into the deficit, so we may want to consider looking at this month carefully and projecting what can we reduce. Maybe here we can't reduce loans, but maybe we can reduce entertainment, like it or not. But if you don't have money, and maybe reduce personal care down to $300, right? So it means that in the months of February you wouldn't be able to spend more than $300 on personal care and more than $100 on entertainment. And even with that, we need to probably reduce it even further. So let's reduce gifts and donations so we can balance the budget. Surplus months are okay, but deficit months you got to be careful, even though it's not a substantial amount of deficit. So maybe this other numbers will come out a little different. Maybe you underspend in the previous months and you will have some funds available to improve your cash flow. But that's the whole purpose of budgeting. This is where we look at the difference and we plan for our cash flow, and making sure that our expenses do not exceed our income. In the next section, let's take a look at planned versus actuals. We were dealing primarily with planned values. Now let's see, how can we capture actuals? And there are multiple different ways how this could be done, and I'll show you both of them. I know two ways, and if you know more, please share your thoughts as a feedback to this video. This is greatly appreciated, because as you know, not a single instructor can know everything, so all the feedback is greatly appreciated. I always read all of the feedback and trying to improve and incorporate it into my future videos. So this is planned, right? What we can do here, we can create two columns for months of January. For example, we can say that this is January planned, and the next column would be January actuals. Right, and that one way to do it kind of makes formulas a little bit clumsy, and you have to be careful that you don't account and double count your incomes or double count your expenses. maybe use different color, maybe use different formatting on the font, or change it a little bit. So that's one way of doing it. I'm gonna use Control Z, or you can use undo to undo that, so we are back to the original state. Another way to do it is if we save this spreadsheet and call it family budget planned, right? And we will save our document. What we can do, we can right mouse click and say move or copy, and we can say create a copy of this. And we'll call it, the first one would be plan and the second one would be actuals. So you want to make sure you're careful, don't mess them up. What you can do here is maybe actuals, mark it with one type of background, so highlight everything and mark it with light yellow, and plan would be light green or something like this. So because we don't see everything on the screen, you probably know this, but I'm just going to show you that you can change the zooming and increase or decrease the zooming on the file. But for the planned, what you can do is you can highlight it and mark it as vividly different colors. So now we know that actuals are as light yellow, and planned is light green. In the next section, we're going to look at how can we add formatting and graphs to make the data that we're looking at more appealing and more visual and better understandable for the regular user. We are back into the tool, and here what I'd like to show you first is how we can apply some formatting. In order to apply formatting, what we want to do, we want to select the table, and we want to select all the values that you'd like to format here, and you can include or not include. I didn't include family budget as the title, but I just included the values. And what I'm going to show you is that there are different cell styles, and as I hover on top, you can select different cell styles for heading styles, for output style. I kind of like this style, some calculation styles. But it's up to you and your personal choices what you'd like to select. There are a lot of different styles. There's also formatting for the table itself, light and medium, that you can do, and it asks you, does it have a header? And then it applies some formatting, and you can switch between different formats, which is some predefined styles created by Microsoft that's professional looking. Or if you don't like any of those, obviously you can create your own, but I like reusing things, and that's why I recommend you to investigate what's already available before trying to reinvent the wheel. And another thing I'd like to show you is something that's called spark lines. This is the quick visual representation of the values. So for example, if you want to see how our income is changing between months of January and December, I highlight the entire row and I select the rectangle that shows up, and I click spark lines and I click line, or I can change it to the different spark line. I can change it to column, or I can change it to win-loss, which is, in our case, it's the same value, so we don't see much of the difference. But I'm going to show you how this could be done for the values that are not the same. So I selected it, Control C, and I'm going to paste it for the different rows in this column O, and this is the spark line for the income one, which is the same across the year, but total is different. So let's see how total could be looking. We can be looking at the line. This is what we looked at first, or we could be looking at the column, which is a little bit different. And you see we made some adjustments in the second month, and that's why we see some gaps here. But that's a nice visual representation, and that's sparkling. This is the new feature of Microsoft Excel 2013. And in the last section of the video, I'd like to show you some sample files that Microsoft provides with Microsoft Excel 2013. If we navigate to the file and then try to create the new file, these are the templates, and it's a mixture of the locally installed templates as well as online templates. In the past, you had to select if you want to use local templates or Office.com templates. Now you can just search and you will see everything that's available. So for example, let's do a search for budget, and I hit enter, and it's searching a lot of different templates that's available. So you see there are a lot of choices for the budget for you to choose from, and there are different categories for the budget. Business 65 documents, just the budget 114. So there are plenty of files to look from. And the point here is that you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. You can just see if something that Microsoft already developed will work for you and for the goals that you're trying to reach. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Make sure to download the sample files from this tutorial at howtoanalyzedata.net. If you like it, this tutorial, we have a lot more at How to Analyze Data YouTube channel. Also encourage you to check free training courses and join them at udemy.com. Just search for us at How to Analyze Data at Udemy. And if you know how to do things better, please let me and everybody else know. I always read the feedback, I always appreciate it, and always trying to improve and share my knowledge with everybody. Hope you enjoyed this video, and see you next time.